If you're looking for a car that managed to become the default answer to almost every automotive question for decades, then you are probably already thinking about the Volkswagen Golf. And today, we are diving deep into one of the most important generations of them all, the Volkswagen Golf 7, produced from 2012 until 2019. This is the generation that took everything people loved about the Golf and refined it to a point where it almost felt unfair to the competition. But before you rush out to buy one, there are things you absolutely need to know. Because while the Golf 7 is one of the most complete hatchbacks ever made, it is not perfect. Some engines are brilliant, some are okay, some can drain your wallet if you are not careful. And there are common faults across the range that you should watch out for. So in this video, we're going to talk about every engine option, their horsepower figures, what they are like to live with, and what typically goes wrong. By the end of this, you will know exactly which Golf 7 to buy and which one to walk away from. When the Golf 7 arrived in 2012, it was built on Volkswagen's new MQB platform. That platform was a big deal because it made the car lighter, stiffer, and more efficient. It also meant that engines and components were shared across a huge range of Volkswagen Group cars. That is both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, parts availability is excellent, and most mechanics know these cars inside out. On the other hand, if there is a design flaw in an engine, it usually affects a lot of cars. Let us start with the petrol engines, because this is where most private buyers look. At the bottom of the range in many markets was the 1.0 TSI 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine. Depending on the year, it produced either 85 horsepower, 95 horsepower, or 110 horsepower. On paper, that does not sound like much, but thanks to the turbocharger, it feels more lively than the numbers suggest. In everyday driving, especially in the city, it is surprisingly punchy and economical. However, early versions of the 1.0 TSI had some issues with coolant leaks. The thermostat housing and water pump module could fail, leading to coolant loss. Ignition coils can also fail over time, which is not catastrophic, but can cause misfires. Carbon buildup on intake valves can happen because it is a direct injection engine, especially if the car is used mostly for short trips. Overall, it is a decent choice if you mainly drive in town and want low fuel consumption. But I would personally go for the 110 horsepower version for a bit more flexibility on the highway. Next up is the 1.2 TSI, which was available with either 85 horsepower, 90 horsepower, 105 horsepower, or 110 horsepower depending on the market and year. This engine was popular in the early years of production. It is a 4-cylinder turbo petrol engine and feels smoother than the 1.0 TSI. Fuel economy is still good, and it is a solid everyday engine. The earlier versions of the 1.2 TSI had timing chain issues in older generations, but by the time it was fitted in the Golf 7, it used a timing belt, which is generally more reliable. That said, the water pump and thermostat housing can still fail, similar to the 1.0 TSI. There have also been reports of turbo actuator problems and occasional oil consumption if maintenance was neglected. As long as the timing belt service has been done on time and the car has a good service history, the 1.2 TSI is a safe and sensible option. Then we get to the 1.4 TSI, which was one of the most popular engines in the Golf 7 lineup. Power outputs range from 122 horsepower to 125 horsepower, and later 140 horsepower, 150 horsepower, and even 160 horsepower in some markets. This engine strikes a very nice balance between performance and efficiency. The 150 horsepower version in particular feels genuinely quick in a normal Golf. It makes the car feel effortless without stepping into hot hatch territory. However, this engine is not without its issues. Early 1.4 TSI units in other models had serious problems, but in the Golf 7 most of those were sorted. Still, water pump and thermostat housing failures are common. Carbon buildup can occur over time due to direct injection. Some owners have reported issues with the cylinder deactivation system on the 140 and 150 horsepower versions, known as ACT. When it works, it improves fuel economy by shutting down 2 cylinders under light load. When it does not work properly, it can cause rough running or warning lights. In most cases, software updates or actuator replacements fix it, but it is something to check during a test drive. Above that sits the 1.5 TSI Evo engine, introduced after the facelift around 2017. It replaced the 1.4 TSI in many markets and typically produced 130 horsepower or 150 horsepower. This engine was praised for its smoothness and efficiency, and it also used cylinder deactivation. Early versions had a well-known issue called the kangarooing problem, where the car would jerk at low speeds, especially in manual versions. Volkswagen released software updates to address this, but some owners were still unhappy. There were also some reports of high oil consumption and hesitation issues. Over time, most of these problems were ironed out, but if you are looking at an early 1.5 TSI, make sure all software updates have been applied. Now let us talk about the performance petrol engines, starting with the Golf GTI. In the Golf 7, the GTI came with a 2.0 TSI engine, producing 220 horsepower in standard form and 230 horsepower in the GTI Performance version. After the facelift, power increased to 230 horsepower for the standard GTI and 245 horsepower for the GTI Performance. This engine is part of the EA88 family and is generally strong and tunable. It offers excellent performance and still reasonable fuel economy if driven sensibly. Common issues include water pump and thermostat housing leaks, which seem to be a theme across many Volkswagen petrol engines. Some cars can experience carbon buildup on intake valves over time. There have also been cases of turbo wastegate rattle. The DSG automatic gearbox, if fitted, requires regular servicing. If neglected, it can develop mechatronic unit problems. Overall, the GTI is considered quite reliable for a hot hatch, as long as it has been properly maintained and not abused. Then there's the Golf R, which is the all-wheel drive monster of the range. It uses a 2.0 TSI engine, producing 300 horsepower in early models and 310 horsepower after the facelift. This engine is also from the EA888 family, but tuned more aggressively. The Golf R is very fast, very capable, and surprisingly usable every day. However, running costs are higher. The Haldex all-wheel drive system requires regular oil changes. If neglected, the pump can fail, leading to loss of all-wheel drive. Water pump and thermostat housing leaks are again common. Some owners have reported issues with the rear differential and Haldex coupling if maintenance was skipped. Ignition coils and spark plugs can wear out faster due to the higher performance. If you want a Golf R, make sure it has a full service history and ideally has not been heavily modified. Now let us move to the diesel engines, because in many markets, these were the most popular versions of the Golf 7. Starting with the 1.6 TDI, this engine was available with 90 horsepower, 105 horsepower, 110 horsepower, and later 115 horsepower. It is a 4-cylinder turbo diesel designed for efficiency rather than performance. It delivers excellent fuel economy and is cheap to run. However, it is not particularly fast. Common issues include EGR valve problems, especially in cars used mainly for short trips. Diesel particulate filters can clog if the car is not driven on longer journeys regularly. Injectors can also fail over time, and dual-mass flywheels can wear out on higher mileage cars. Overall, the 1.6 TDI is a solid choice for someone who does a lot of highway driving and wants low fuel consumption. The 2.0 TDI is probably the best all-round diesel option. It was available with 150 horsepower, 184 horsepower in the GTD, and later 190 horsepower after the facelift. There were also lower output versions around 110 horsepower in some markets. The 150 horsepower version is the sweet spot. It offers strong torque, good fuel economy, and decent performance. The 184 horsepower GTD feels genuinely quick and sporty while still being efficient. Common issues include EGR cooler failures, which can lead to coolant loss. Diesel particulate filter issues can occur if the car is not driven properly. The water pump can leak. Some early cars were affected by the diesel emissions scandal and had software updates, which in some cases led to complaints about reduced performance or increased EGR-related issues. The dual-mass flywheel and clutch can wear out, especially on higher torque versions. Overall, though, the 2.0 TDI is considered robust if maintained well. There was also a 1.4 TGI Natural Gas version in some markets, producing around 110 horsepower. This engine runs on compressed natural gas and is very economical where fuel is available. However, it adds complexity with high-pressure gas tanks and additional components. Maintenance and inspection of the gas system is crucial. Repairs can be more expensive, and not every workshop is familiar with these systems. In addition to the standard engines, there was the Golf GTE, which is a plug-in hybrid. It combines a 1.4 TSI petrol engine with an electric motor to produce a combined output of around 204 horsepower. The GTE offers electric-only driving for short distances and strong performance when both power sources are combined. The hybrid system is generally reliable, but battery degradation over time is something to consider. The electric range in older models may be significantly reduced compared to when new. Charging components and power electronics can be expensive to repair out of warranty. The 1.4 TSI engine in the GTE shares similar potential issues with other 1.4 TSI units, including water pump and carbon buildup concerns. Beyond engines, there are other known faults with the Golf 7 that you should be aware of. One common complaint involves the infotainment system. Early units can freeze, reboot randomly, or suffer from touchscreen issues. Software updates can fix some problems, but in worst cases the head unit may need replacement. Digital instrument clusters in facelift models can also develop glitches. Another area to watch is the suspension. Front suspension components such as control arm bushings and drop links can wear out, especially on cars driven on rough roads. Rear suspension can develop knocking noises due to worn bushings. None of this is unusual for a car in this class, but it is worth checking during a test drive. The DSG gearbox, which is very popular in the Golf 7, deserves special attention. There are different versions, including dry clutch and wet clutch variants, depending on engine torque. The wet clutch versions are generally more robust but require regular oil and filter changes. If these services are skipped, the mechatronic unit can fail, leading to expensive repairs. The dry clutch versions can suffer from juddering, clutch wear, and hesitation at low speeds. Always check for smooth gear changes and ask for proof of DSG servicing. Electrical issues can also pop up. Some owners have reported problems with keyless entry systems, parking sensors, reversing cameras, and various control modules. Most of these issues are not catastrophic, but diagnosing electrical faults can be time-consuming and expensive. Rust is generally not a major issue on the Golf 7 thanks to good corrosion protection, but you should still inspect door edges, wheel arches, and underbody components, especially in regions with harsh winters. Overall build quality of the interior is strong, but some cars can develop rattles over time, particularly around the dashboard and door panels. Climate control units can fail, and air conditioning compressors have been known to give up on higher mileage cars. So what does all this mean if you are thinking about buying a Golf 7? It means you should not be scared, but you should be informed. The Golf 7 is one of the most well-rounded hatchbacks ever made. It offers excellent driving dynamics, solid comfort, good safety features, and a wide range of engines to suit almost any need. But the key is choosing the right engine and finding a car with a full service history. If you want simple and efficient for city driving, the 1.0 TSI 110 horsepower or a later 1.2 TSI can make sense. If you want the best balance of performance and economy in a petrol, the 1.4 TSI 150 horsepower, the 1.5 TSI 150 horsepower are great options, as long as software updates have been done. If you want diesel torque and long-distance efficiency, the 2.0 TDI 150 horsepower is hard to beat. If you want fun, the GTI is a fantastic hot hatch that is relatively reliable for its class. And if you want all-weather performance and serious speed, the Golf R delivers. Just be prepared for higher maintenance costs. No matter which version you choose, check for coolant leaks, listen for unusual engine noises, make sure the gearbox shifts smoothly, verify that all electronics work properly, and insist on documented maintenance. Avoid heavily modified examples unless you really know what you're doing. And remember that the cheapest Golf 7 on the market is usually cheap for a reason. At the end of the day, the Golf 7 earned its reputation for a reason. It refined the formula to a point where it feels mature, solid, and complete. It is not the most exciting car in standard form, and it will not turn heads like a sports car, but it does almost everything well. And if you choose carefully, it can be a dependable companion for many years. That is why so many people still recommend it. Just make sure you buy with your head, not just your heart. And you will likely understand why the Golf 7 is considered one of the best all-round hatchbacks of its generation.